All right, today we're diving into the incredible story behind one of classical music's absolute giants, Johann Sebastian Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 5. And believe it or not, the most surprising part is why this masterpiece was completely ignored for more than 100 years. I mean, just imagine this. You pour your heart and soul into what you know is your greatest work, a project that just completely pushes the boundaries. You send it off to the big boss who asked for it, you're expecting, some praise, maybe a nice paycheck, a promotion, and what do you get? Nothing. Just crickets. Well, that is exactly what happened to Bach. So to really get what happened here, we've got to rewind all the way back to the early 18th century. Now, Bach was already a pretty big deal, a super renowned musician, but even a genius like him wasn't immune to the, let's say, whims of the aristocracy. And that's how this whole commission just went completely cold. Okay, so here's the timeline. In 1719, Bach meets this guy, Christian Ludwig, the Margrave of Brandenburg. He's a nobleman, and he's so impressed with Bach's playing that he asks him to send over some music. So Bach goes away, and get this, 2 full years later, he delivers this set of 6 absolutely brilliant concertos. And the response? Like I said, total silence. The Margrave never paid him, never even sent a thank you note, and, this is the real kicker, he never ever had the pieces performed. So what gives? Why the royal snub? Well, it wasn't that the music was bad, far from it. The most likely reason is pretty simple, actually. The Margrave's court orchestra just wasn't good enough to play it. Bach had written these incredibly complex, super demanding pieces, and the musicians, well, they just couldn't handle it. So this absolute masterpiece was just filed away on a dusty library shelf, totally unplayed. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, right? What on earth made these concertos so special? And, apparently, so difficult. What was so revolutionary about this music that a whole orchestra couldn't even try to play it? Well, to figure that out, we need to look at the type of music Bach was writing. He was using a format called the Concerto Grosso, and you can think of it basically as a musical conversation. See, a concerto grosso isn't your typical setup with one solo instrument facing off against a whole orchestra. Nope. It's all about the interplay, this back-and-forth dialogue between 2 different-sized groups of musicians. It's kind of like a debate or a really lively chat, but, set to music. And these 2 groups in the conversation, they have specific names. First, you've got the concertino. That's the small group of soloists. In our case, for Concerto No. 5, that's a flute, a violin, and a harpsichord. And then they're answered by the rapiano. That's the bigger group, the main string orchestra, kind of holding down the fort. Okay, but here's where Bach gets really rebellious. Within that small group of soloists, he does something nobody saw coming. He takes an instrument that was always in the background and shoves it right into the spotlight. You have to understand, back then, the harpsichord was basically part of the rhythm section. Its whole job was to hang back, play chords, and provide harmonic support. What musicians call the basso continuo. It was super important for sure, but it was never the star. Think of it as the musical glue holding everything together, not the main event. But not in this piece. No way. In Brandenburg Concerto No. 5, Bach just completely rips up the rulebook. He gives the harpsichord this massive, wild, incredibly difficult solo. So, why would he do that? Well, one popular theory is that he just got his hands on a brand new, top-of-the-line harpsichord, and he was basically dying to show off what it, and let's be honest, what he could do. And the result is just mind-blowing. This was so radical, so completely unheard of at the time, that many people now consider this to be the very first keyboard concerto ever written. Think about that. He basically invented a whole new genre, right here in this one piece. So this concerto isn't just a one-off stroke of genius. It's also like a perfect time capsule of the whole era it came from. So let's zoom out for a second and kind of decode the musical DNA of what we call the Baroque period. And first off, the name Baroque itself is pretty cool. It actually comes from a Portuguese word for a weirdly shaped, imperfect pearl. And get this, at first it was kind of meant as an insult, suggesting something was way too ornate or over the top. But that name ended up being perfect because it totally captures the highly decorative, super complex style of the time in art, architecture, and of course, in music. So what are the key ingredients that make up the Baroque sound? Well, there are 3 main things to listen for. First, there's ornamentation. Think of these as little musical decorations.
Then there's polyphony, which is this amazing weaving together of different melodies. And finally, terrace dynamics, which is all about how they used volume. We're going to take a closer look at a couple of these.
Let's start with polyphony. It literally just means many sounds. And what that looks like in the music is one instrument will start playing a theme, and then a second later, another instrument jumps in with that exact same theme. It creates this incredibly rich, intricate, overlapping texture. It's almost like a musical game of tag, and it's an absolute signature of Bach's genius. Okay, then you've got terraced dynamics. Now, most of the music we listen to today gets louder and quieter gradually, right? It swells and it fades, but back in the Baroque era, the changes in volume were often super sudden and abrupt. The best way to think about it is like walking up or down a set of stairs, or terraces. You go straight from one level to the next, from loud to soft with nothing in between. It creates this really cool, dramatic contrast. So, let's recap. We have this total masterpiece, jam-packed with innovation, and it gets snubbed and stuck on a shelf to gather dust. But, of course, the story doesn't end there. The real question is, why does a 300-year-old snub still matter to us today? I mean, it's a totally fair question, right? Can a piece of music from the 1720s really still be heard on the radio today or have any relevance? Did all that innovation just vanish? Or did the musical DNA that Bach created here actually go on to shape the future? Oh, it absolutely shaped the future. That rebellious move, putting the harpsichord front and center, wasn't just some clever one-off trick. What Bach did was create the blueprint for every single piano concerto that came after him. Seriously, every time you hear a piano concerto by Mozart or Beethoven or Rachmaninoff, every time you hear that pianist taking the lead against a massive orchestra, what you're really hearing is an echo of Brandenburg Concerto No. 5. When you get down to it, Bach's music was just so structurally brilliant that its influence is, well, it's everywhere. The idea he pioneered right here, a keyboard soloist grabbing the spotlight, it became the foundation for one of the most popular and dramatic forms in all of classical music. So no, these innovations didn't die in the 1700s. They went from a dusty library shelf to becoming part of the very DNA of Western music. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, the most celebrated piano concertos of the last 300 years all owe a huge debt to a masterpiece that was written for a boss who probably never even listened to it. It makes you think, what other incredible connections, what other musical blueprints are just hiding there in plain sight, waiting for us to really hear them?